The specter came as Mercy Lewis was bedridden and unable to speak. Two other specters were already assaulting the young woman, softening her up, and this one bore a final threat. Sign the devil's book now or die before the day is done. Mercy resisted. The specter brought out a winding sheet and then a coffin. Still, the maid, Mercy Lewis, refused to sign. She was determined not to lose her soul, but would she lose her life at the end of the day? Welcome to Salem Witch Trials Daily. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
This is Sarah Jack. Today is Friday, May 20th, 1692, and we have quite a story to tell. Let's start with the specters.
The specters involved here were Mary Esty, John Willard, and Mary Whitteridge. They assaulted, allegedly, Ann Putnam Jr., Abigail Williams, and Mary Walcott. And Mary Esty's specter also tormented Mercy Lewis to the point that Mercy believed the spirit would kill her before midnight.
2 days ago, Mary Esty was released from prison when all but one of her afflicted accusers changed their mind regarding their identification of Mary as one of the specters who hurt them. The one who insisted Mary was afflicting her was Mercy Lewis.
Once released, Mary Esty returned to her hometown, Topsfield, where she stayed at the home of her son, Isaac Esty Jr., rather than in her own home nearby. Her family must have been ecstatic that she was free, though I bet that was tempered by the fact that Mary's sisters, Rebecca Nurse and Sarah Cloyce, remained in prison waiting to be tried.
Down in Salem Village, many visitors came to the home of John Putnam Jr. and Hannah Putnam. John and Hannah had taken Mercy Lewis off of cousin Thomas Putnam's hands when his wife and daughter, both named Anne, seemed to become seriously ill through bewitchment. Now Mercy was so violently sick that she seemed near death.
Samuel Abbey was one of the people who heard of Mercy's condition and went to the Putnam household. He arrived around 9 in the morning and saw Mercy in bed and unable to speak. Hannah Putnam sent Samuel to go get Ann Putnam Jr., who was considered a visionary because she could see the specters. Hannah needed to know who was afflicting Mercy Lewis.
And am I correct in understanding that Hannah is a newly grieving mother? She's looking for answers to her own daughter's death while she's caretaking for Mercy. So she feels like Mercy is going through what her baby just went through. When Samuel came back, he was accompanied by Ann Putnam Jr., Abigail Williams, and Sarah Trask. Sarah was the niece of Thomas Putnam through his sister, Ann.
And Ann Putnam Jr. and Abigail Williams recognized the specter assaulting Mercy Lewis as the shape of, quote, the same woman that was sent home the other day. They also saw the specters of John Willard and Mary Whitteridge hurting Mercy, though those two individuals were bodily locked away in jail.
According to Samuel Abbey, Mercy was in a sad condition and unable to speak most of the day. When she recovered enough to say a few words, she said, "Dear Lord, receive my soul," and "Lord, let them not kill me."
Later, Mercy became more alert and said that Mary Esty had said she would kill her before midnight because she did not clear her as the rest did. Once she had spoken, Mercy, quote, fell very bad and cried out, "Pray for the salvation of my soul, for they will kill me."
It is just really not lost on me that this is happening right where her baby just died.
In the same home
In the same
where
home.
the baby passed. Yeah.
So I think that would definitely crank up the fear of child death.
Oh, yeah. And they were blaming the child's death on witchcraft as well.
Mary Walcott testified that Mary Esty's specter choked Mercy and pressed on Mercy's chest with her hands, then wrapped a chain around Mercy's neck and choked her with that.
If we go by this eyewitness testimony, Mary Esty's shape was extraordinarily violent and intimidating.
A deposition by Mercy's uncle and 3 other men even have Mary Esty's specter threatening Mercy with a winding sheet, then a coffin, showing that she would kill her if she did not sign the devil's book.
Marshal George Herrick and Constable John Putnam Jr., the owner of the home that Mercy's at, agreed that Mercy claimed to see a winding sheet. They added that Mercy said, "Well, I had rather go into the winding sheet than set my hand to the book."
The records portray a dramatic scene. Facing a reported midnight deadline of death, community members believed they needed to act urgently to save Mercy Lewis.
Around 8 p.m., Constable John Putnam Jr. arrived at his home. He was accompanied by Marshal George Herrick and noted specter fighter Benjamin Hutchinson.
The men apparently believed that Mary Esty would indeed murder Mercy Lewis tonight in the Putnam's home, and they sprang into action.
The men really felt Mercy's life was in danger. They traveled south 5 miles in the night to the home of John Hathorne, the magistrate. The situation was grave enough to disturb him in his house at night.
John Putnam Jr. and Benjamin Hutchinson filed a complaint against Mary Esty, and Judge Hathorne wrote a warrant which required the marshal, his deputy, or a constable to bring Mary before him at Thomas Beadle's Tavern tonight.
The Marshal George Herrick traveled 8 miles himself up to the north to reach Isaac Esty Jr.'s house. As he approached the home, the story goes that Isaac hid his mother in the root cellar, where she crouched by the cornerstone.
But George Herrick searched the home, found Mary, and took her into custody. The two made the late-night trek 9 miles south to Beadle's Tavern in Salem.
But bringing Mary to the tavern didn't even relieve Mercy's affliction. When George Herrick and John Putnam Jr. made it back to John's house at about midnight, Mercy Lewis was still having fits.
Mercy seemed to the men to grow weaker and weaker through the night. When she spoke, she complained of being very sick to her stomach. Finally, around daybreak, she fell asleep.
However, just as the men were leaving again, Mercy was taken with a dread fit so that we perceived life in her, and that was all.
All that trouble, dragging our poor grandmother out of the cellar and throwing her in jail, that wasn't enough to help Mercy, according to the testimony.
Must have been so harrowing for Mary. She tasted freedom, and then Mercy Lewis stole the freedom away from her, along with Mary's very life.
Mary Esty was hanged with 7 other innocent people on September 22nd, 1692.
This panic that happened on May 20th is like a microcosm of the whole witch trials. It shows the intensity of the fear of witchcraft, that they were willing to travel all those miles at top speed in the middle of the night, trying to arrest her before the deadline so that Mercy's affliction would stop and she wouldn't be murdered. They think they're preventing a murder.
In a related development, the afflicted girls attending Mercy Lewis were supposedly assaulted by Sarah Proctor, Sarah Bassett, and Susanna Roots.
Elsewhere, specters of Daniel Andrews and Sarah Elizabeth and John Proctor allegedly attacked Susanna Sheldon and Elizabeth Booth.
James Kettle, Elizabeth Balch, Abigail Walden, and John Hale, the minister in Beverly, were deposed against Sarah Bishop, who was not related to Bridget Bishop.
And Bernard Peach was deposed against Susanna Martin, while Elizabeth Booth was deposed against Elizabeth Proctor, Sarah Proctor, and John Proctor. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a wonderful episode with Mary Bingham talking about this Mary Esty story in more detail about her life and trials, and everything that happened on May 20th is part of that. We'll have a link in the show notes.